Hey guys, welcome to Uber Eats Hustle. David here. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I know you guys normally come here expecting videos full of tips and tricks on how to earn more with Uber or make the most of your time, as well as the cool ride-along videos that I do. But today I want to talk about something that appeared in the news yesterday that, if it were carried through to fruition, could have pretty heavy impacts on Uber Eats drivers as well as really all gig app workers. So what I'm referring to, of course, is yesterday Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh said to Reuters that it's looking like in a lot of cases gig workers should actually be classified as employees. This is, of course, as opposed to independent contractors, which is what the vast majority of gig workers are classified as currently. So just in case you need some clarification between the two, I'm going to look away from the camera real quick because I'm reading my computer screen. The IRS definition of an independent contractor says the general rule is that an individual is an independent contractor if the payer has the right to control or direct only the result of the work and not what will be done and how it will be done. As far as comparing independent contractors to employees, it goes on to say, you are not an independent contractor if you perform services that can be controlled by an employer, as in what will be done and how it will be done. This applies even if you are given the freedom of action. What matters is that the employer has the legal right to control the details of how the services are performed. So obviously there's some gray area there with gig apps like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, etc. And there have actually been actions taken in some states to try to classify gig workers as employees as opposed to independent contractors. To my knowledge, so far, none of them have actually passed. So gig workers are still considered independent contractors in all 50 states. So since our Secretary of Labor believes that it is likely a lot of gig workers should be classified as employees, I think it's important to take a look at both what gig work looks like currently, as well as what it would look like if gig workers were to suddenly be classified as employees. I will say that at this moment in the United States, with things the way they are currently, I think it's a bad idea. That comes with a very huge, hairy but, and I'll get into that right here. From a driver's perspective, if gig workers were to suddenly become employees, there would be some positives and some negatives. And this is not an exhaustive list by any means. I'm only going to talk about the two major glaring ones. So first, let's talk about pay. If gig drivers were suddenly made employees, that means that the companies that employ them would suddenly become responsible for paying them at least the federally guaranteed minimum wage of $7.25 per hour. I don't know about you, but I would like to imagine that the vast majority of drivers for all these platforms are making significantly more than $7.25 an hour after tips are factored in, even after counting taxes and wear and tear on their vehicle and gasoline. None of us are getting rich off of this, but we are pulling home more than the federally guaranteed minimum wage. And unless you're in just a super slow market or you're doing something really, really wrong, you're probably making more than this. As things are currently, with the minimum wage only being $7.25 per hour, I think this is a terrible idea. It could be a good thing if we had a drastically higher minimum wage. I'm not gonna pretend to even know how to calculate exactly what that number is. I do have my own personal opinions, but this is not the place to share them. All I know is that it needs to be drastically higher in order for this classification as employees to work. How would this likely play out in practice? So my fear is that gig app companies, which are not known for trying to pay their drivers more than they have to, will suddenly try to pay their drivers a flat rate, say $15 per hour, with all hours worked. Sounds pretty good, right? But keep in mind, employers in the United States are not required to reimburse for mileage. And this job is extremely mileage dependent, which means that all of your expenses, your gas, your wear and tear are going to come out of that $15 per hour. That drops your pay drastically by the time that's all factored in. My second fear is that because they are now paying a fair wage of $15 per hour, they will disable in-app tipping and just raise delivery fees by the amount that customers were tipping on average beforehand. It would now allow these companies to control what amount of that money goes to the drivers. So I end up averaging about $22 to $27 an hour over the course of a week. If suddenly Uber says, okay, our drivers are now employees, we're gonna be very progressive. We're gonna pay a $15 per hour wage, which is over 2 times the federal minimum. My wages now drop by on average about $10 an hour because they took away the ability for customers to tip me in the app because they're paying progressively now, so tipping's not necessary. So the end result is my pay just got cut by 40%. As I said before, I think the only way that this has any chance of working out to the advantage of a driver who actually takes this seriously and works during busy times is by instituting a drastically higher federal minimum wage, which one, I don't see happening anytime soon, and two, still may result in us earning lower wages if they decide to disable tipping in the app because they're now paying so progressively. The other major impact that I think is going to affect most people if we are suddenly classified as employees is scheduling. So with most of these gig apps, you can just log in and work whenever you want to. And since the apps only pay you for jobs completed, not for time on the clock, these companies are incentivized to not place any limits on the number of drivers who could be online at once. This can be a good thing because it allows you to work whenever and wherever you want, and you're not beholden to any type of schedule. In my experience, this can also be a negative because sometimes it can result in too many drivers online at once, which dilutes both the number of orders as well as the quality of those orders, meaning that you're going to end up making less money. If gig app drivers were to suddenly become employees, scheduling would be the first thing to change. Having spent over half a decade as a restaurant manager, I know exactly how this is going to go. Companies would create a schedule with a certain number of driver slots per hour. Due to the nature of the business, the schedule would come out very last minute, just like it does at most restaurants or retail stores here in the US. This means that if you were a driver for a gig app, you would have a much harder time planning your personal life schedule to coincide with your work schedule. This also means that they would employ what's called just-in-time scheduling. This means that they could alter your schedule at any time with little or no notice and hold you responsible for not showing up for shifts. They could cancel your shifts if they decide it's not going to be as busy as they initially thought, meaning that you would have no opportunity to earn money as opposed to still having an opportunity to earn some money, albeit probably less than it would have been if it were busier. Additionally, I guarantee you they would not allow drivers to work more than 30 hours per week. 30 hours per week over the course of a month is what defines a full-time employee according to federal definitions. Beyond 30 hours per week, they would be required to provide you with the opportunity to purchase health insurance. And having done this for a few years, I know that gig apps have absolutely zero interest in providing this or any other benefits to their drivers. It's just the nature of the business model that we have allowed them to set up. So in summary, should gig app workers like delivery drivers, Uber drivers, etc., be classified as employees? My personal opinion, with the current state of employee rights and protections here in the United States, is no. Absolutely not. It can only be a bad thing for drivers. Unless, and this is a big unless we also passed a huge slew of labor rights and protections for low wage, service industry, low skill, that's bullcrap by the way, workers here in this country. Without those added labor rights, turning gig app workers into employees just turns Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, GrubHub, Caviar, all these apps into just another crappy, low-paid service industry job with no rights or protections. Guys, that's it for today. I realize this is a very touchy subject that can be pretty polarizing. I realize I may lose some subscribers for voicing my opinions on this, but ultimately, I think we just need to improve labor and worker rights for everyone here in the United States, especially people in lower wage service industry jobs, which to me is the closest thing that being a gig app driver equates to. So until those better rights, protections, and pay are afforded to all service industry workers, I can't say that I would want my gig with Uber Eats to turn into an employment relationship. I've spent years working in the service industry. I know how restaurants, retailers, and other companies typically treat their employees, and I don't think drivers or employees in these other roles should be treated that way. Unsubscribe if you want. That's okay. I understand. If, however, you did like this video, go ahead and throw a like on it down below. It helps other people see this one and other videos like it. And if you want more great Uber Eats content videos in your feed on a regular basis, just go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I am stepping down off my soapbox and getting ready to go out and earn some money. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you next time.